What is up, nerd friends? Welcome back to the Nerd Bench. We're going to install a WP10BL60 combo with the 3652 4000 kV motor into this 4x4 Mini Slash. So I have two of these 4x4 Mini Slashes, and I want to do like a comparison, maybe a side-by-side, if you will, of the two different setups. So they come with the Traxxas BL2S system, which is their budget-minded RTR combo, and I want to say that if you were to pick up one of those new, it's more than one of these Quicrun combos are. So I thought this would be a great way to compare the two of them. So we're gonna pull the stock system out, pop the new one in, go through calibration setup, all that fun stuff, cover the basics. Now I have run this, I don't know, once, twice, maybe three times total, just to make sure everything works okay. And something that's pretty cool about the Mini Slash is that it actually uses 10th scale electronics, so a little bit easier to do upgrades and tuning, stuff like that. Full-size servo, full-size 10th scale speed control, and a normal 540 size motor, or what's a 3650 or 3652 size motor. If you didn't know, the non-kV numbers of the motor are the size. The first two digits are the diameter in millimeters, and the second digits are the length in millimeters. So I'm going to start by pulling out the motor. It looks like everything for this is a 2mm screw. So you take the gear cover off. All right, so to get the motor out, it's the 4 screws that are in the top. I thought it was just 3. It's all 4 of those. I just can't see. So once you get the motor loose, there's two screws in the bottom that hold the speed control in. They actually screw into the bottom of the stock speed control case. Then you have to take the one screw off the receiver cover. That slides the receiver cover. The receiver kind of gets stuck in there. It's got like a ring of tape around it to keep the muck out, and then you got to kind of break that seal to get the speed control unplugged, and you get your stock system out. Set the car aside, and then next step is to pull the motor off of the gear cover / motor mount. I'm looking at where the motor is mounted, because we're going to use the same pinion gear with the higher kV motor. This is a 3300 kV motor. We're putting a 4000 kV in. In a perfect world, I'd probably drop down one tooth, but we're going to leave it with stock gearing just to see what happens, and I don't have any 32 pitch gears like this right now. So the set screw in the pinion is a 1.5, and the motor screws are 2.5 millimeter hexes. The screws will kind of just stay in that plastic mount. So I won't need this for now, but we're gonna pop this plug off. You can actually push the metal out and then unsolder the stock wires and solder the new speed control in there. We'll get to that in a second, but we're gonna do the motor install first. So this is a 3652. Again, it's 36 millimeter diameter, 52 millimeter length. And if we hold it up next to the stock motor, it's actually a tad shorter by probably just maybe 3 or 4 millimeters, but still has the normal 1/8 inch or 3.25 millimeter size pinion shaft. And you can see there, it is give or take about the same length. It's slightly shorter, but the shaft actual length is really similar if you base it off of that little bushing bearing race area. Probably should have said it when I took the pinion gear off, but you want to pay attention to the spacing of the pinion in reference to the face of the motor plate, just so you get that spacing right. I'm eyeballing it here. You can kind of slide this. You can slide that in and look at it and see if your pinion gear is close or not, because it does kind of key in there, and it looks like we got it in the right spot. And then there's also the dust that's in there lines up with where the gear is, so that makes it kind of easy too. So slap this guy back in there now. All right, so motor is in. Next, we're going to deal with what to do about the speed control, because it doesn't have a screw mount, but I've double-side taped things to this honeycomb. It works fine, and if you wanted to get fancier than that, you can actually take a piece of Lexan, like a body material, an old wing you got flashing left over from a body, or even a scrapped junkyard leftover RTR body, cut a square, stick it down in there, and use some screws and some nuts, and you can make a little plate to mount this guy if you wanted to. I'm just gonna double side tape it in there and it's gonna be fine, but we're gonna deal with that after we put the plug. So now that we get the stock speed control and motor out, we're gonna reuse the plug. And there's, I guess, a small trick to this. You never want to like just cut the wires off and butt solder or splice them together if you don't have to. So there's a trick to getting these apart. And basically, if you tap on the leading edge of the metal part of the connector, you can get to pop out of the little locker. So it's pretty straightforward. And this is a situation where you can hurt yourself because you have to get something kind of firm and then hit it with another thing. And usually all it takes is 1 or 2 taps like that. I'll try it one more time. That one's in there good. Let's see. There we go. And then it slides out. And that way you can just unsolder these guys and then reuse them in the connector. And then the other thing, if you're going to use Traxxas plugs, low power stuff, they're okay. But if you look, the size of that metal surface is not much bigger than this tiny wire that's on here. So you can't go big power applications. They're not going to like this stuff. But for this testing and this comparison, because I want to use the stock batteries, I'm going to give it a fair shot and run it with the exact same plugs that are on the RTR speed control as well. So, I don't know, it's kind of cool. I think if you use something heavier, it's easier. Yeah, that one came out one shot. So now I'm just going to unsolder those and then solder these right onto the ends of the WP10BL60. One thing I like to do, vice grips are a lifesaver for soldering stuff because you can grab onto the plugs and kind of just clamp this guy down and it'll hold it still while you're messing with all that. I like to have a piece of cardboard around so that I don't drip solder onto my solder mat or my pit mat. And this guy's going to want to flop back and forth a little bit. So something you can do to help that is another set of pliers. These are my handy dandy wire strippers, and that way you get a little bit of support that way. And I can't see. All right, so a pro tip. I've worked in a hobby shop over the years. There's a little line on the metal part of a Traxxas plug. If you get any solder over that line, the wire is not going to seat into the plastic housing correctly. So it's important that you keep everything behind that little line. So what I like to do is make sure that I trim the exposed area of the wire that I'm soldering on there to make sure that it's just a little bit shorter than that tab. So once you get those solder on, you can slide them back into the Traxxas housing. Just make sure that you get the polarity and the orientation correct, because of course that does matter. The plug itself is marked with a positive and a negative. The black is the negative, the red is the positive. And what I like to do is slide these guys in like this, and the same thing like we did before. You're going to give them a little tap on the backside just to get them to lock in. And you'll kind of feel them click in. There's like a little kind of just a snap. And this one, sometimes if your poker is jamming on the plastic, that can be a problem too. So you want to maybe try a different poker. And then just look at the front edge. You'll see they'll be almost right up to the edge of the plastic, but not quite. They won't go over the edge, but they'll be right at the edge. And then give it a little pull. If it's not in there right, they'll slide back out. I'm not a fan of Traxxas plugs. I don't typically suggest that anybody use these because there's just not enough surface area there for the big power stuff. But for 2-cell in a little tiny truck like this, it's probably gonna be fine. So we got our plug situation addressed. So the receiver is going to end up back in the stock location. The speed control is going to go where the stock speed control was. I'm just trying to figure out which way I want wires to go here. It's not really going to make too much difference. But these motor wires are way too long. So I think eventually I'm going to shorten these guys up a little bit because that's ridiculous. That's too much wire. All right, so I just used 2 layers of the double-sided tape on the bottom of the speed control, and I mean, that honeycomb isn't very confidence-inspiring. So if I were to make it a little more secure, the easy way is you take the stock speed control and you get a piece of, this is just clear Lexan that I got at my hobby shop, and you can cut it into a strip, mark the holes, and then you can nut and bolt this thing to the chassis, and it'll give you a nice flat surface area to mount the speed control to. I'm going to try this like this because I've double-side taped things to this honeycomb before, and it works. The hitting the double side tape with a little bit of heat from the shrink wrap machine works really good as well. So next up, I'm going to plug the speed control into the stock receiver. And the one thing you got to keep an eye on these Traxxas receivers is there are 2 channel number 1s for dual steering setups. Some of the rigs have 2 servos, and so there's 2 steering channels or 2 channel number 1s. The speed control goes into channel number 2, and on some of the Traxxas receivers, it's actually the 3rd slot that's in the line. So pay attention to that. And then the other one is, you do have any calibration or setup problems in these next steps, make sure that your radio doesn't have any telemetry or the preset fancy pants models in it, because that'll mess stuff up as well. All right, so it's a little fiddly. There's a pocket that's underneath the receiver that you can kind of tuck all the wires into, and there's a little hook finger guy that goes into a latch right here to pay attention to. I don't know, I've not taken one of these apart and put it back together myself yet, so a little bit of a learning curve on some of this stuff. So I decided to position it with the battery wire to the front of the truck, motor wires to the back, and eventually I'm going to shorten these motor wires up, but for now, we're just going to hook it up A to A, B to B, and C to C to get everything started. I also added some double side tape to the switch, so that guy is stuck down nicely. All right, so pop in the battery pack, and I'm double checking that I got the polarity right, because that's always fun when you get that wrong. Plug that guy in, turn the radio on. This is stock radio, stock receiver. Again, double check that the speed control is plugged into channel number 2 before you button this guy all up. And then we're going to do the calibration process. And this is a one-time deal that you need to do. Unless you change the radio or anything like that, then you need to redo this calibration process. Or if anything goofy starts to happen with your throttle operation or your neutral, or maybe it doesn't want to arm, these radios, the mechanical pot that's in here, especially over time, will kind of start to drift around and shift. And what that does is it makes the neutral inconsistent. Then it affects the speed control's ability to turn on and arm itself, makes the reverse not work correctly. So all sorts of goofy stuff can start to happen. So if that does happen to you, just redo the calibration process, and that'll clear the error in most situations. Sometimes you want to hit this guy with a little compressed air, because it's a mechanical pot, like a rheostat, like a dimmer switch. That's the actual mechanism. That's it. All right, so calibration, you hold the button, turn the switch on. It starts to blink. You can see in there's a light on the speed control that's blinking red. You'll tap it to set neutral, then hold full throttle, tap it again, blinks twice, hold full reverse, tap it again, blinks 3 times, once, twice, 3 times through the process, and then when it's done, you get operation. Now, the first time I did that, the gear mesh was horrible, and it wasn't the actual mesh because it's kind of preset, but the alignment of the pinion was too far off the face. It was closer to the end of the pinion shaft than it was to the face, and that was having it rub on the housing. So when you put the pinion gear in the motor, you want it closer towards the face of the motor versus the end of the shaft. If you do complete calibration and the motor runs reverse, you would switch the A and the C wires. And that only applies to a sensorless setup like we're dealing with here. In a sensored setup, you'd have to change the motor rotation setting in the speed control. But for sensorless, if the motor, like if you give it throttle and it runs reverse, you can switch those wires. But that's only after calibration. Make sure you calibrate it first. Next, we're going to look at the tuning or the programming. Now, you can run it just the way that it comes out of the box, works completely fine for 99% of the applications, but there is tuning available, so let's take a look. The programmer comes with a double-ended harness. One side goes into the box where it says speed control, and it is marked for orientation. That has to be correct. The other side plugs into the speed control and the fan port. You unplug the fan, and you plug the other end of the harness in there. It's marked for orientation, but the black wire goes to the same spot where the black wire from the fan went. Turn the speed control on. This guy is going to light up, and then you're going to go into parameter settings. And the first one that you're going to see, we'll bring up the table, and we'll just go through these one by one. Running mode, this is where you can change it from normal driving mode to forward without reverse if you run at a racetrack that doesn't allow reverse, or if you want like a rock crawl mode with the instant reverse. The voltage cutoff is where you can set the actual voltage per cell for the speed control. Default setting is set to 3 per cell. That's usually pretty safe. The punch is the response of the speed control. The higher that is, the more one-to-one the throttle response is. If you've got good batteries and good plugs, you can crank that guy all the way up. If you have any sort of hesitations, or maybe you got weak or old battery packs, or you're running plugs that aren't great, you can lower the punch setting to help with that. I tend to like my punch turned all the way up, so that's where I'm going to put it. Up next, we got drag brake. That's brakes at neutral. So if you want the car to automatically apply brakes when you get to the neutral in the radio, that's where you would do that. It's good for track applications. Max brake force, that's how strong your push brakes are. So if the brakes feel too strong, you can adjust that right in the speed control. Max reverse force defaults to 25% because a lot of us aren't very good at applying reverse. So having that turned down makes it a little easier to use the reverse when you need to. Neutral range is the dead zone of the throttle and the actual reverse or the brakes. So if the brakes are inconsistent, or the drag brakes are inconsistent, or maybe the reverse is inconsistent, you can increase the neutral range setting to give it a wider dead zone. Makes it a little easier on the speed control. Timing is electronic timing advance. The speed control can actually apply timing to the motor to make it a little bit faster. It defaults to a little bit of timing because a sensorless motor by default has no mechanical timing. So this allows it to have just a little bit, makes the motor run a little bit better. I'm going to leave that at default. This is where that blinky stuff comes into play. Sensorless setup, you're never going to race that in blinky class, so they always default with a little bit on because a sensorless motor has no mechanical timing and it just makes it run a little bit better. So. LiPo cells, that's where you can set the number of cells that'll actually be at. So if you run multiple packs, that's important to have it set to auto. But if you're going to run a 2-cell all the time, just set it to 2-cell. If you're going to run a 3-cell all the time, set it to 3-cell. And then you have a reset mode. So if you make all these changes, you don't like how it drives, you can do a default reset, and that's where that happens. Another quick note, it does work with the basic LED program card. If the sticker on the box doesn't match the settings, you can always reference the speed controls instruction manual. There's a chart inside with what all the numbers mean. And of course, I'll throw a link in the description down below so you can get that easily as well. Well, there you have it. That's the install of the WP10BL60 G2 with the 3652 Quicrun motor installed into a Traxxas Mini Slash 4-wheel drive. I'm going to get this guy out, run it around a bit. I do, like I said, have another truck just like this with the stock system, so we'll be able to do some side-by-side comparisons. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, shoot us an email, northamerica@hobbywing.com. Do you like podcasts? We do a podcast. It's called RC Stuff, powered by Hobbywing. We give away free stuff each and every episode. All you have to do to find out how to enter to win is listen to an episode. Just look up RC Stuff, powered by Hobbywing on your favorite podcast service, or you can get it straight from the source, anchor.fm/Hobbywing. We got new merch. Go to the website, hobbywingdirect.com. Go to the lifestyle and apparel section. There's Hobbywing socks, shirts, hats. Check it out. And as always, folks, thanks for watching. It's The Charlie Show right here on the Hobbywing official YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.